What's good, YouTube? Warstorm here, coming at you guys with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the new DDD Link monster. So, Link Vrains 2 was leaked last night. I was in the middle of playing the new Spider-Man game, and playing through that, and all of a sudden I had Discord up and everyone was melting down because the new Link Vrains 2, the initial wave of Link Vrains 2 pack cards had been revealed. So, of course, I can't talk about all the other ones. If you guys do want to hear it, let me know. But I will be, of course, DDDs are a favorite of mine, so we'll be talking mostly about that one. But if you guys want to hear what I think about the other links, let me know in the comment section below, and I can do a completely separate video talking about the other ones. But again, DDDs are a favorite of mine, so I'm going to be talking about the new Link monster today, which is our boy here, DDD Abyss King Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh is a Dark Fiend Link 2 with bottom left and bottom right arrows. He requires 2 DD monsters. So initially upon seeing this, I'm like, okay, 1800 attack is now, not the biggest thing, but again, this DDDs don't really have issue putting big monsters on the board. So I do think that, its attack basically doesn't mean anything when, your deck easily puts big monsters on the board. As far as the summoning, it's very easy to summon, and it's a Fiend type Link 2, which means you can use this and a DD monster to climb straight into Summon Sorceress, or eventually maybe when she gets banned, climb into Metaltron or Deco Talker. So that's actually pretty good, being able, easily opening up extension and, easy plays that don't involve making Electromite or something as bad as Archfiend is pretty good. And however, the arrows are something I feel like they could have done a little bit more with. Now, don't get me wrong, the arrows are not bad, but I do think the problem I have with them is that I feel like Konami needs to get a little bit more creative with how they put arrows for some of these Link Vrains cards, because when everything is bottom left, bottom right, it's not very creative, and especially when you have an archetype like DDD that has easy graveyard recursion, it's kind of nice to have a down arrow and a left or right arrow, because that means you can continue, you can have another, not only do you have your extra monster zone monster, you have an extra zone from this when it's brought back from the graveyard. So you'll have a total of 3 zones when this is brought back. So I do think that the arrows could have been a bit different, but it's not something total, bottom left, bottom right is still very helpful for what the deck wants to do. However, its effects, because that's really what matters, it has 2 different effects, and they're both are once per turn for each effect. So if this card is special summon, you can place 2 DD pendulum monsters with different names from your deck in your pendulum zones, and if you do, you take 1,000 damage. Also, you're locked into DDDs for the rest of the turn. This effect is not what I would have given the deck. Don't get me wrong, like, the effect is not bad. The fact it triggers on special summon is pretty big, because you can do all your shenanigans, then bring this back and set things and set your scales up and continue to go, or recur things with something like Thomas, which is actually pretty good. The current DDD combo actually, believe it or not, does pendulum summon. There are some situations where you will pendulum summon out of Ragnarok and then use its effect to bring something back and make a rank 8, for example. And this actually does help with that. And that's actually pretty decent, like, in terms of that. Now, as far as, like, what I feel like I really wished it would have had an effect to grab something back, a DD monster back from the grave, when a DD monster summoned to a zone it points to, would have been what I would have done with the card. But I do think that, this does facilitate certain kinds of play styles with the deck. It's not like DDDs don't have decent pendulum monsters. Ragnarok and both Abyss Ragnarok and Thomas have pretty decent pendulum effects. Thomas allows you to recur things from the extra deck, and Ragnarok allows you to continue stink combos. And Copernicus and Newton are very solid 110 scales, particularly in Newton's case. While it didn't see play in the past, with things like Vortex Dragon, and being able to recycle things from the grave has actually gotten a little bit better. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to play, Copernicus has always kind of been a staple in anywhere from 1 to 3 in a lot of different builds. So now you have another, way to get in. The fact that it thins out your deck of cards you probably don't want to draw in a lot of situations is also pretty good. But the fact it locks you into DD for the turn is kind of sucky. With that being said, it does facilitate a very going second, smash your opponent in the face kind of play style, and DDDs can play into boards. They have cards like Yugioh, cards like Kaiser Ragnarok. They're very powerful. Ragnarok can steal almost any monster and stick it and equip it to it, and Yugioh can basically cold wave the entire board and then heavy storm. So it's definitely not. The deck can play that way if it needs to. So if you are wanting to play a more pendulum focused OTK variant, this card is for you. It definitely fits that kind of play style for the deck. But is it what, the very combo oriented going first build needed? Probably not. But is the effect totally terrible? No. It's not like, and if you do really want to play with this card, there are cards like High King Caesar and Siegfried that the deck can make that, even if it's locked into DDD, is still pretty decent. You're still dealing with a spell negation and a card that can negate multiple monster summons in a turn. So overall, I think that's pretty good. And I do think that the effect has a bit of an unnecessary restriction, but it is what it is. Konami's not going, after what happened with both Monkey Board and Scout, I do not think Konami's going to have another card that doesn't have some kind of restriction on it that gives you a 1-card scale. And the second effect, however, is not very good. If it's Link Summon card, that's the key thing, is destroyed by opponent's attacking monster or an opponent's card effect, you can special summon DD monster from your action deck or grave in defense mode. This effect is not very good for a number of reasons. Well, first off, it has to be Link Summon, which means most of the time if you're going, this isn't going to sit on the board for very long. Most of the time it's going to be immediately linked off and just, like I said, Summon Sorceress or another Link 3. It's not going to, that opens up more spaces, and that's the main thing problem I have with this effect is that it doesn't allow it to do it whenever it's destroyed by battle, which is the problem I have with it. Now, I've always had problems with effects like this because your opponent can inherently play around them. There are too many ways for your opponent, if you're for an opponent that actually reads cards, to get rid of this so it doesn't trigger that effect. And that's the problem I have with it. The second effect is definitely not very good. But that being said, to summarize, I do think the card, it helps certain kinds of play styles for DDD. If you do want to play a very OTK heavy build, this card facilitates that. But is it the card that a lot of DDD fans were wanted? Probably not. But you can. The fact that it's a DDD monster, it could have been a vanilla and it would have been decent enough to help the deck a little bit along. So anyway, guys, that about comes to the end of the video. What do you guys think of the new DDD Link? And if you would like to see me talk about some of the Link Brains 2 cards, let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. So Warstorm signing out.